Hi, this is a quick tutorial on how to use and understand pre and post fade effect sends. Okay, so firstly just a little bit of an explanation of what's up on this Cubase project. On channel 1 here I've got an acapella which has no reverb or delay or any effects of that sort applied to it, and that sounds a little bit like this.
Lately, I'm finding sunlight where you are.
Underneath that, I've got an effects channel set up with a church reverb applied to it, and that's in there. Okay, so one thing that you might notice about this reverb unit is I've got the mix value set to 100%, which means that all I'm getting out of this effect unit is the wet signal. So what I mean by wet and dry signals is a dry signal is just the unaffected signal. The wet signal is the affected signal, I suppose. So if you think of it in terms of a reverb unit or an effects unit, the dry signal is what you input into the effects unit, and the wet signal is what you would get out of the effects unit. Okay, so here we can see that by having that at 50%, you would have some of the dry signal and wet signal outputted from the effects unit. But when we're using send effects, we want only the wet signal to be outputted from the effect module. Okay, so let's close that and have a look at the channel of the acapella. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is apply the effect send in here. Okay, so I'm going to select church reverb, which I'd already set up, and I'll just take you through some of the controls that we have for this effect send here. Okay, so firstly, to turn the effect send on or off, we have the setting, whether or not you want to set the pre or post fader setting, and we can also edit the effect there by clicking the E button. Okay, Cubase defaults to being post fade send, and there's a good reason for that, because mostly you'll be using a post fade in your productions, I would assume. Okay, so just a little bit of an explanation of what exactly pre and post fade sends are. To understand this, you really need to understand the where we send a signal to the effects module in the signal chain. So if you can imagine the acapella track that we have there, the signal from that travels down through the top of this channel here. It reaches the fader. The signal is then affected by the placement of the fader. If it's down at infinity, then we don't hear anything at all. If it's at -7, we'll hear some of the tracks, so on and so forth. And then the signal is outputted out the bottom of the fader, and then it goes off to a master bus or a group or so on. Okay, so what we can do is we can decide at what point in the signal chain we send a copy of our acapella signal to the effects unit. So if it's post fade, as it is at the moment, the send will be after or post the fader. So the signal will come down, be affected by the position of the fader, and then it will get to the send, and then the signal will be sent to the effects module. Okay. Conversely, if our send is set to pre-fade, then the signal will come down, stop before it gets to the fader, send some of the dry signal off to the reverb unit or effects unit, and that means that the dry signal that we want to send to the effect unit is not affected by this fader's position at all. So that can be quite handy if we're trying to do some use some creative effects there. So just to give you an indication of what those two states sound like, what I should explain as well here, with send effects, you get to control the amount of dry signal that you send to the effect unit by using these sliders here. Of course, you don't actually get that control on the insert effects, because you'll control the mix of wet and dry in the effect module itself, so here effectively. But because we've got R set at 100%, we need to control how much dry signal we send to the effect unit, and that's here. So I've turned the effect on. We're in post fade, and we'll have a listen to what that sounds like on the a cappella track.
Lately, I'm finding sunlight where you are.
And it's quite interesting to watch what happens when the fader's reduced. Okay, so just see how that sounds.
See that you're shining.
Okay, you could hear there that because it's we're sending the dry signal post fader, when I reduce the level of the fader, effectively no dry signal can get through to the effects unit, so it brings down the level of the effect as well as the dry signal. So the dry and the wet signals are brought down together, so we've got control over both there. So if we do exactly the same thing here, but we set to pre-fader, so effectively we're sending the dry signal at this stage of the signal chain. Let's see what happens here.
Banana rhythm and I just can't fight it. Banana feeling it, so special. Now leave, give me that.
Right, so because we have it set to pre-fader, the fader itself has no effect on how much dry signal we send to our effect unit. Therefore, at this stage, all we're doing is hearing the wet signal only, so the signal that's returned out of the effects unit. So this can be quite a handy technique if you want to give the impression of maybe leaving a space, or moving backward from a performance. I've used it a few times in that respect, so it can be quite a handy thing to use, and it's quite good for ambiances and things. So yeah, have a play around with pre and post fade effects and how you can use them in your productions. Okay, thank you.